So, to get the conversation started, I'm delighted to be joined now by two friends of mine. Ruari McCallion, a freelance author, writer and commentator on British business and innovation, and Dr. Denis MacShane, former Labour MP, Minister of State for Europe, and also former President of the National Union of Journalists.
I remember you joining us, Alastair. You made a great contribution over the years.
Well, one tries. I'm going to start with you because the negotiation bit, you had to do that when you were Minister of State in Europe. And also the trade union bit aside is not a joke. I mean, that involves negotiations as well. So page 8 of the Telegraph, UK playing politics with peace talks.
I read that, but that's just a Daily Telegraph attack on Germany. Normally it's France. You pick up the Daily Telegraph and they have a little pop at Macron, they have a little pop at Scholz, the German Chancellor, maybe a pop at the European Union President. It's just in their blood. It's rather silly. And actually, I think it plays into Putin's hands because he loves to present the idea of the West, from Biden and Canada right through to Poland, being divided or chipping at each other. I praise the position of Boris Johnson and the British government on this. He's not really part of the negotiating outlook, but I also praise the fact that Mr. Zelensky phones up President Macron and says, can you talk to Putin? Zelensky can't talk to Putin. Macron can, and he puts forward the case to Putin.
Yeah. When you were last on the programme, you talked a little bit about the energy dimension of all of this.
Yes.
And to use that dreadful phrase, but it's accurate in this, I mean, in terms of Russian oil and gas, Germany has more skin in the game than anybody else, and they're facing a real problem. They're actually talking right now, Germany, about rationing energy supplies to industry because homes have got to have it first.
Well, I think they're talking about rationing across the board because they're getting 50% of their gas and about the same amount, maybe a bit less, of their oil from Russia. They've become very, very dependent on Russia for their energy supplies. And it's not just energy, because oil and gas is used in fertilizers. So we're looking at a food problem this year because the farmers can't afford to put fertilizers on the field. It's used in plastics, it's used in manufacturing, it's used in all sorts of things that you may not necessarily think of, even pharmaceuticals. So yes, there is going to be ration, or they are talking very strongly about rationing, because where else can they get it from? That is the problem. There is no alternative supply at the moment. We've seen the Americans, their fracked oil and their shale oil and fracked gas has recovered to the same sort of output as we were seeing in December. It's about 12 million barrels a day. But they are apparently resisting going any higher because, let's face it, if you're in business to make money, which the energy corporations are, they are making a lot of money at the moment. So there is something to be gained by actually controlling the supply themselves.
Let me drag both of you back to this notion of negotiation as well. A fascinating piece under the banner analysis in the Times, which means it's not just reportage. Someone's actually given it a wee bit of thought. And it's a war of two halves for Abramovich, as he hopes that he helps peace talks with help to lift sanctions. Talking about people with skin in the game, blimey, Abramovich has.
Chelsea fans as well.
I thought he was no longer the chairman.
Well, I
thought it was up for grabs.
Yeah, we'll see. No, I mean, Mr. Abramovich is a very skilled business person. He's always been intimately linked with politics. He was named governor of Siberia or Upper Siberia by Putin 20 years ago.
Didn't he form a political party to support Putin when he first took over after...
I think so, but it was all subsumed into United Russia. So
like Marseille in France.
He has got... a very shrewd outlook. Now, and he's got the trust, apparently, of Zelensky. But in the end, I think we talked about the Falklands a moment ago. The Americans then tried to get Mrs. Thatcher to negotiate with the Argentinians. She said no, they've got to clear off out of British territory first, and then we'll talk about talking. I went on the first trip.
Let me just butt in, because you said it almost as a throwaway line, and I know you said it because you know it matters. But within that piece in the Times, I quote, the Zelensky government asked for help, says Rodnansky, Roman, and this is a quote again, Roman is the person who decided to help and to mobilise support for a peaceful resolution. So he's not freelancing. he is acting on behalf of Zelensky and team.
Yeah, I mean, President Zelensky rightly is asking everybody to come in and help, either directly with military supplies and support, which we're providing, but also in putting all sorts of international diplomatic other pressures on Russia.
Yeah.
But in the end, as in the Falklands, that war stopped because the Argentinians were defeated. Now, I wish people would just get a map of Ukraine in their heads. It's more than twice, nearly 3 times the size of Britain, twice the size of France. From Lviv in the west to Odessa on the Black Sea or Kharkiv, it's over 1,000 kilometres. Yeah. From Normandy, where the Allied forces landed in 1944, to the German border, it's about 700 kilometres. So this notion that Russia can conquer this enormous landmass, occupy it, I mean, if they occupied it under any conditions, there would be an insurrection, there would be guerrilla attacks, Russian soldiers and Quislings would be shot. People will say, is Putin getting the right information? Putin speaks and reads fluent German. So he's, unlike most politicians in Britain, he actually has another language. He can get another source of information from another country. I think he knows what is going on. He needs, though, I think, to have more pressure put on him, which is why Britain and America and the West should be less pusillanimous and really help Zelensky and the Ukrainians with far more military gear. Yeah. So give them the tools and they can start finishing the job.
Is another major theme in a lot of the newspapers about stumping up with the real gear. Another point on the art of negotiation. It is, as Denis just said, it's a give and take thing. And there was a former top British general who was quoted, I think, in the Daily Mail yesterday morning, basically saying, within the context of negotiations, if we concede anything to Putin, then brutal aggression has won and NATO has lost.
Yeah, I
mean, Denis's point of the Falklands is we won, game, set and match.
Yeah, I did hear that thing about essentially that NATO has lost. I think that was a bit of an exaggeration. But yeah, I think we can draw some parallels with the 1930s, that every time Hitler was allowed to do something, he came back for more. Would he be satisfied with the old Donbass and Crimea? Apparently not, because he already had that. So he's looking to get the east, essentially Luhansk and...
he didn't have all of it, and in any case, the Donbass, that used to be the great coal and heavy steel. You know about industry, Ruari, production centre for the whole of the Soviet Union.
Yep.
But steel, coal? Come on.
A bit like the Ruhr Valley.
Yeah, but steel and coal today?
Yeah.
I mean, that's yesterday's, that's 20th century economy. So even if he gets, a lot of rusty old steel plants, he's not going to make any money out of it. And frankly, when I hear generals, somebody once said war is too important a thing to be left to the generals. Offensive remark, jokey remark, but
especially generals who think that the Falklands are off the Scottish.
And the other one yesterday, General Sir Parker, who said that NATO had been defeated. God, I mean, is he speaking for Putin or what? But the important thing is, I can tell you, I wouldn't leave any diplomatic negotiations or peace efforts to generals. They are men of war, God bless them, and the profession of arms.
But you would give an oligarch a bit of a run.
I'm happy to see anybody step in.
Me too.
And I don't. People are chipping, a bit of Macron, a bit of Scholz.
Yeah. Final word on negotiations.
I was going to say there are two things. You can either give your enemy a golden bridge over which to retreat, that's Lao Tzu, or you can get them to accept reality. And I think there is a reality in Ukraine, which is that they're not going to win. The Russians are not going to win. They may not be defeated.
That's right.
But they're not going to win. Yeah. And then you have to bring in the golden bridge. Yeah. Let him have something, give him some way to retreat with honour.
What's the Americans call it, an off-ramp?
Yeah.
Yeah, which not one I'd heard before this war started, but there we have it. The other thing I said to both of you I wanted to talk about, because people are utterly gripped by it, but you're formerly in government, you know more than most people I know about British business and industry. The cost of living crisis, I mentioned it to you in passing. Yeah. Robert Halfon was on the programme I did on Thursday and talked about Price Watch, because folk are still cross that although Rishi only took 5p off the fuel duty, it was a good thing and people celebrated. It's still not getting through.
No.
That is an outrage.
It is outrageous. I told you about the petrol station just down the road. I get diesel and it's at 1.79. It was at 179 on the morning of the budget, and it's at 179 now again. But on Wednesday, instead of going down 5p, it went up 5p. And then came down 5p on Thursday morning.
And then you made the huge mistake of getting some domestic oil as well.
Yeah, I did. I ordered the oil yesterday because I'd almost run out.
I should point out that if you just come to me for the briefest moments, Rory and I both live in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Therefore, we have domestic oil to heat our homes.
Yes. I got some in December, and it was just over £200. And yesterday, it's nearly 500 quid. Which is a lot of money. And I was feeling pretty smug, actually, because on electricity, I came off my fixed price contract, and I've gone straight onto variable, and it's only gone up 20%. But the oil has doubled, and it's doubled in 3 months, more than doubled in 3 months. And it's actually quadrupled compared with this time last year. What I should have done last year is buy one of those tankers that they were actually paying you to take away.
Are you in a state of political confusion when you hear the Labour Party saying don't put taxes up, bring them down, whether it's the national insurance one or levies or the rest of it? Labour now seeming to be in the colours of what the Tories used to be when you and I and Rory were growing up. We kind of understood that, the Tories cut tax and reduce spending, and it's now Labour who is saying, don't do that, go down.
I'm not going to make a party political point, but clearly...
Nor was I, but I do find it genuinely intriguing.
Well, I mean, the great success of Tony Blair, I remember seeing the posters on May the 1st, 1997. I, Tony Blair, in his handwriting, pledged that the income tax will not go up under this government. I thought, bingo, we're going to have a landslide. Now, what is President Macron doing in France? 4% maximum rise in electricity costs. He's standing with the people. Other countries in Europe are doing similar things, not quite so dramatic. It's easier in France because all our energy there, or nearly all the energy there, is nuclear, whereas we got out of nuclear, Germany got out of nuclear, Italy had a referendum in 1987 to get out of nuclear. So, yes, I think that does make a great deal of sense. And what worries me is, you mentioned some protests. Well, have we forgotten about what were called the gilets jaunes in France? The yellow vests. I mean, that was a tiny hike in fuel duty, but France is twice the size of Britain. Many people live in remote rural communities, need their car to be a care assistant, to go to the dentist, go to the doctor. And it just mushroomed and caused Macron a great deal of trouble. So you remember the tanker fuel dispute?
Well, I was actually going to take you back to the poll tax as well, which was another
poll tax. Actually, that's a much better example.
I remember reporting on huge demonstrations in Trafalgar Square. Poll tax was withdrawn. William Walgrave, who fought it up, lost his job, and ere long Thatcher was out.
Thatcher was out as well. Well, I heard Brandon Lewis just now on the news talking about 20 million, or was it 40 million, or 50 million, or 60 billion. I mean, when you talk about billions, that's not even monopoly money. That's blah, 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 blah. What will matter to ordinary punters is, do I heat, do I feed? And I would be very, very nervous indeed were I the Prime Minister before he faces something. It won't be organised by unions, won't be organised by the Extinction Rebellion type thing. It'll be like the poll tax. It came from nowhere.
Gentlemen, we have to leave it there for now, but pop out and stretch your legs and have a coffee and join me again at 1 o'clock, where we'll carry on with our conversation about what I want to talk about and stuff that you may wish to talk to us about. And delighted to say that we're being joined by an academic who specialises in international affairs as well, which is up both of your streets as well. So have a break. And for now, Denis and Rory, thank you both very much indeed.